now to Brian, who's going to introduce our speaker. After which, a vote of thanks will be given by Ron Gett. Thank you, John.
Oh, well, it is indeed a pleasure to introduce our speaker today. As is already referred to by our good doctor here, the association with Thames Chase as far as this club goes back a long way. And certainly during my year, I think your year, Shubash, and one or two others, donations were made to Thames Chase, and a lot of trees were planted. I presume they've grown a bit since then. So we have a long association with Thames Chase, and from a personal point of view, I think it's a wonderful place, and we obviously wish to continue our support. But Mary Wright has joined us today. She's got one of the trustees, I understand, one of the 6 trees of the Essex Thames Chase, which is a wonderful thing. And she's going to give us an update on the chase, so I'm looking forward to that. So, Mary,
yes, please.
Would you just talk amongst yourselves while I get the PowerPoint going?
You've got to behave yourself, because she's no microphone, and she said if they make all the noise, they won't hear me.
Thank you very much for inviting me along today. As mentioned, I'm a trustee of the Thames Chase Trust, and there are only 6 of us at the moment. We can do with more trustees, if anyone feels that they've got some spare time, but I've entitled the talk today, Thames Chase Moves On, because I know you have been involved before with Thames Chase. I'm starting off by just reminding you what Thames Chase is about. It is a community forest. It's part of the National Forest Programme, and it was set up in 1990. And Broadfields Farm, where we have our forest centre now, was adopted in just before 1996, which is when you planted your trees on the site. So we have been going now for over 20 years. The reasons the forest was set up was to provide for national biodiversity, provide access to the countryside for leisure and education, and making our environment generally an attractive place to live. So this picture really is what we aim to do throughout the forest. It's used by people, it's important as a habitat for wildlife, and it's a pleasant place to be. It's one of 12 community forests set up across England. I think there's only 8 left now. The Thames Chase was one of the first to be established, probably because this area was very badly spoilt following the war because of gravel extraction and landfill, which many of you will remember, as I do very well. And it covers 40 square miles, and it covers 5 local authorities. Havering sits right in the middle of it, so all of Havering falls within the boundaries of the community forest. It's not just a spread of trees, the community forest, it covers a whole wide gambit of green spaces. Very mature woodland, new woodland, lakes, river, valleys, heathland, Tyler's Common, all of that falls within the forest. Okay, so those are the 4 main areas that Thames Chase is trying to achieve. Obviously the green belt is very important in this area, and as I said before, and many of you have lived here a long time, you know how important the green belt is and how vulnerable it is at this time with the need for new housing. There is a need to create new woodland. When Thames Chase was set up, there was only 3% woodland across the whole of the 40 square miles. The aim at the end of 40 years is that we should have 30% cover, and we're around about 18% now. This is a view of our forest centre at Broadfields Farm. And you can see at the back Cranham Church, or Saints Church. Now this was derelict farmland when the Forestry Commission first started planting as part of the Thames Chase Community Forest. This is how it looks now. And that's what we've achieved in the last 20 years. If you're not sure about hectares and acres, I think there are 2.47 acres to a hectare. So if you're more comfortable with acres, hopefully you can translate that. But it's quite a considerable achievement. Probably the most surprising part is the last statement, which is that Thames Chase has raised over £8 million of extra money to be used on green space within the 40 square miles. So that's not our taxpayers' money, it's not council tax, it's extra money from charitable organisations, such as yourselves. Hopefully we have seen the back of this through Havering. There are still 1 or 2 sites where we've still got landfill going on. But this has probably been the cause of most disruption to the green space through the 40 square miles. We've lost a lot of parkland, Stubbers for instance, a lot of farmland, including my father's farm, which was Baldwin's farm, all went to gravel extraction and landfill, which destroyed a lot of the mature woodland and trees, lots of the natural watercourses that went across these 40 square miles of a community forest. So major work for the community forest has been to pull that back, to make sure that we still have that green environment that we all need. I just mentioned that about the 3% and the 40% tree cover. The left-hand picture is a picture of Central Park in Dagenham. If any of you lived out that way, you would know the Millennium Park and Central Park in Dagenham was, again, it was very badly spoilt because of house building after the war. And on the right-hand side, that's a nice piece of coppice woodland. That one was taken in Bellis. It was a nice piece of coppice woodland. This is where the trust comes in. As many of you will know, that the local authorities were retrenching quite dramatically in 2010, and we were very vulnerable. The project, the Thames Chase project, was very vulnerable, and the 5 local authorities who had been supporting the project were looking at their support, and we very nearly lost it all. It was a very difficult year, because 2 of the local authorities decided definitely to stop funding. A third one was hovering. Havering stayed with us, thankfully, and Essex was hovering as well. So there was a lot of negotiations going on through 2010. And at that stage it was decided that the project should be handed over to the Thames Chase Trust, because the Trust has access to other forms or other pockets of money, not just local authority money. And it was decided the Trust took it on. And the trustees did a lot of hard work and managed to keep 3 of the local authorities on board at a reduced amount. 2 we lost, Barking and Dagenham and Brentwood. We lost those 2 funding authorities. We are trying hard to bring them back on board, because we feel we can't chop the forest up and not support those 2 local authorities. We're not doing that. But you know, if we are going to work within their area, we feel they should be making a contribution. But as of April 2011, the Trust took over and we lost all our staff. It became totally run by volunteers. The small amount of money that we were able to attract from the local authorities, we commissioned the Forestry Commission to carry out our work for us through the forest. That is important, because the Forestry Commission are only in this area because of the Thames Chase project. If the project folded, they've made it clear they will leave the area. And in this area they have 11 spaces that they own and manage. There's a new one they're starting, which is the extension to Bonnets Wood. They're just starting on that one. So it would be devastating to the area if the Forestry Commission moved out. So the two organisations now are working very closely together. The Forestry Commission work out of our offices. They work on projects that we identify. So again, it's a good union between the two, but it does need to be funded properly to ensure that it continues. They are also retrenching. So the work goes on, and this is just some examples of where we are now in terms of the work of the community forest. Good paths for people to use. Access for all is one of our slogans, to make sure that people in wheelchairs, pushchairs, mobility scooters can get access to the green spaces. So the paths that are put in are all weather paths. To provide lakes for the wildlife, and for fishing, of course, for recreation. To look after mature woodland, because that's important. We don't want to lose any more. We have very few ancient woodland sites through the Forties Fair Mars, and we must take care of them. And then at the bottom it shows you one of the wildlife meadows. Some of you may remember those. There was one at Pages Wood and one at the Forest Centre where they sowed these lovely wildlife meadows, and it became overrun by oxeye daisies. It looked like a ski slope. But sadly it's not appropriate, because oxeye daisies, they're very strong, these seeds, and they take over all the other wildflowers. So they cut it early to make sure the seeds didn't spread. So today the forest now hosts a whole range of wildlife, and we have a wildlife group who have set themselves up, and it's amazing what they're actually recording, having seen. Regularly see buzzards flying overhead. We have kingfishers through the forest in nearly all the water spaces, little egrets regularly seen. We had the waxwings last year coming through. All of these are being recorded. We've got muntjac deer, and someone said they saw fallow deer just recently as well, so they're coming back into this area. So these green spaces are encouraging the wildlife to return. And of course the insects as well. There's a wide variety of those, and again we've got an elderly gentleman in his 80s cataloguing all of those for us, taking photographs and cataloguing them. The water bowl, that is a very big success story, and perhaps I want to put in here about the M25. A lot of us regret what they're doing on the M25, but I have to say I've changed my mind a little bit about them, because I found out that I've forgotten who the company are that are doing it. Anyone remember the company that are widening the M25? No, can't think of it. Anyway, they have to have, part of their organisation is the ecologists, and when they do any of this road work, they send in the ecologists up to 6 months before they start the work to survey where they're going to be working. And because they've come right next to the Forest Centre, we found out that the natural watercourses, they went along and took all the voles out of the courses, took them off to a holiday home in Somerset, bred them on, and brought them back now they've finished the work. And we've got 3-4 times as many. Which, they don't just do it with watercourses, they do it with the lizards as well. Anything that they find, they take away. And they also, when they do their road widening, when they're doing their road widening, you might have noticed a low fence that they put along the side. They move everything that's in the way of the machinery from the roadside, the other side of that fence, to protect it whilst they're carrying out the work. And these ecologists are very knowledgeable people, and when they take down trees, as they have, going through the Forest Centre and Bellis, they're now providing us with kestrel boxes to put up in anything like pylons, because they know that they've taken away the habitat of the kestrel. And the kestrel is vital because the kestrel uses the corridor of the M25 as their hunting ground. so it's part of the ecology. And they've also provided us with 2 huge barn owl boxes. If anybody has any experience of climbing trees and taking up a barn owl box from a tree, we would be grateful, but they are huge. These are the reptiles that we've seen. I had 2 adder skins brought in this week into the centre to show the children. And so we've got adders through the forest as well. The forest also, obviously, is not just wildlife, it's about people and the way people use the countryside. Recreation is important to all our lives, and cycling, that's a big pull in the forest because of the paths that we put in. Horse riding, all the paths that are put in have a section along the side for horse riding. They're not allowed to gallop. They can trot, they can canter, but they're not allowed to gallop. Dog walking, obviously, that's in this area. We have a large number of people with dogs, and the forest provides excellent opportunities for walking dogs. Fishing, that's the gentleman sitting there at Bears Fishing. And sometimes there's actual organised events. There's the Ramblers Association, Stubbers with the boating. This was a Thames Chase half marathon they did some years ago. And of course the young children being able to get out into the green space and enjoy it.
I did my dinghy, RYA, yeah.
And the flowers that are growing.
The dinghy, RYA.
This is just a part of a wildlife meadow, and that's what it should look like. In my youth I remember that very well. It's just a meadow scene, and it is coming back. Celandines, poppies, mayweed, all of those now you see regularly through the forest. Orchids as well, coming back, roses, all those lovely things that enrich our lives just from seeing them. Now, managing the woodland is very important. An unmanaged section of woodland quite quickly dies and it loses a lot of its natural inhabitants. So it is important to manage woodland. We do sometimes get people very upset when they see people like the Forestry Commission going through and cutting down trees. It is important to keep trees managed properly. If they're too tightly together, they would choke one another. When we plant trees, when the Forestry Commission plants trees, or our conservation volunteers plant trees, they plant them very close together, and then they grow up, and then they thin out the weaker trees. But by planting them together, they protect one another, and also they encourage them to go up straight. So particularly at the forest centre, you will see areas that are fenced off to stop the rabbits and the muntjac deers eating the bark, but you'll notice they're very close together. After 10, 12 years, they're thinned out. And then of course there's coppicing, which is important to some species of trees. And it's also important to provide some wood for various activities. Firewood, of course, but there's lots of other things that wood is used for. Coppiced wood is a very important part of that. And you will also notice as well that they do leave some wood on the ground for fungi and for insects to provide homes and habitats for those. This is our gallant band of conservation volunteers, which is growing rapidly. We used to just go out one day a week into the forest with a team of about 12. We now go out 2 days a week with 2 teams of 15 because people are appreciating the opportunity to work in the open air and for the good of what they enjoy. These particular ones are very experienced. So many of them are trained in using different tools, and they go out and do all kinds of things. Litter picking is one of them, which obviously isn't the most enjoyable, but clearing out ponds, trimming back, and doing hedge laying and hedge weaving as well. It is important for the forest, obviously,
Bluebells.
to keep it well managed, in that the undergrowth can then thrive. And if you've been to White Post Wood in Bellas recently, you'll know the bluebell carpet in there is wonderful. There's no other smell like it. If you walk into a woodland of bluebells, early morning, the smell, you can't mistake it. It's beautiful. All through the forest we've got patches of woodland like that. Over at Cranham Marsh, you'll notice there's a piece of woodland there that is full of bluebells. But it wouldn't happen if the woodland was allowed to deteriorate. The conservation volunteers don't just deal with the trees, they do a lot of the construction building. They're building a fishing platform there at Bellas on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, that's a bridge they built down at Davy Down. As I say, many of the men are very skilled at what they can do, and they bring their skills to the team. I say men, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are ladies as well. I should say that it's a mixed group of people. Education for the future. All this tree planting we're doing now, many of us in this room won't fully enjoy. The whole point of it is that we're providing the kind of environment for future generations that we feel is necessary for our quality of life. So educating the young groups is important, and all kinds of things go on through the forest. There are youth groups on the left-hand side, there's A-level students, and then there's the little ones. They're looking down the tube to see if they can find the tree they've just planted. Of course, learning isn't just the smaller children or the youngsters. We learn at all ages. And there are lots of skills that we can still learn and enjoy from the country craftsmen. We even teach survival skills that we may think are not necessary these days, but obviously the children enjoy it, and it makes them respect the environment that they're working in. We're just putting in a new play trail at the forest centre. Part of that is going to be an opportunity for the youngsters to build their own little hide for shelter or for watching the wildlife. Then of course there's other users of the forest, and dog training is one of the things that goes on. We never know whether it's the dogs or the people that are being trained, but Joan, if anybody knows Joan Bunce at the front there, you don't mix with Joan. She's a very positive person. But health, the importance of the green environment has been well recognised for some time. Obviously, Dr. Bird with his green gym was the start of the movement, but we have quite a number of health groups that use the forest as part of their therapy. They use it for walking. We have a cycling project that operates out of our barn at Broadfield, so that people that are recovering in the community can cycle and enjoy the environment as well as taking exercise. And that's our visitors centre. Someone mentioned earlier we did burn down in 2008, very sadly, having raised the money through Veolia Cleanaway Trust to build the first centre through the landfill tax. It was struck by lightning in a very strong storm in August 2008. It hit this top corner and it burnt to the ground because it's a wooden structure. Thankfully they saved the barn behind it. The firemen that bought it realised they couldn't save the new structure. They saved the old structure because that couldn't be replaced. So we now built again, and this is our lovely new visitor centre. That's the old barn, 17th century barn, and stable block. Again, it's all been regenerated by Thames Chase. It was all derelict when the community forest took it over. We attracted quite a number of grants from a number of organisations then, which was operating in this area then, and even Ford's Motor Company did quite a lot of the renovation for us. That's our lovely old barn. It's supposed to be the best preserved in the London, within the M25. It is a lovely old building. We use it for lots of different things, but of course structurally it is a beautiful building. Then there's the old cattle shed or cart shed there that's been converted into an education room, and behind it there are the offices at the centre. A lot of those offices are now free because we don't have staff. So one of the ambitions is for the community, for the trust, is to find people that would appreciate having offices within that building so that we can keep our heads above water because we are responsible for managing it. Recreation, we've got, as I explained, we've got the play trail coming, but we've already got a children's playground. So there's lots of opportunities for families. Community activities. Many of you will know our Apple Day. We celebrate every year. Celebrate National Celebration of Regional Diversity, and we celebrate it at the centre through the symbol of the apple. And we've got quite an extensive orchard at the centre, which is, the trees are now coming to maturity, and we will start cropping them soon. Making of honey. It's very important for the green environment. We've got lots of people who have bees, some of whom have them on our sites. And using the copper stool at the top corner, walking sticks and a lot of kinds of things. So what of the future? We're still on track. We're still on track to provide the kind of green environment that was envisaged by the Countryside Agency when the community forest was set up. This is what we'd like to see in the future, so that people have the opportunity to enjoy green spaces for what they are. That's part of Hartswood in Brentwood. So we still work with the landowners. Thames Chase doesn't own anything. It doesn't own the buildings that we use. It doesn't own anything. We just work with the landowners in order to carry out a concept of green space through this part of East London and South West Essex. This is part of the Millennium Centre and the Bing Valley in Dagenham. The horse riders are enjoying the space as well as the walkers. And that's where you'll find us. And the green on the map shows you the shape of the forest. It's by no means just a rounded area. It meanders through according to where there is existing green spaces. So if anybody has any questions,
Ron, question, Ron.
Mary, I noticed one of the last pictures says on the completion of the project. When is the completion of the project?
It's about 20 years hence.
You won't be here, Ron.
You were here.
How do you know?
It's a 40-year project. The trust look at it as a 50-year project because we feel that there will still be work to do. But the project was a 40-year project. Now we're 21 years into the project.
Thank you.
So what happens at the end of that?
Well, we hope that because we don't own anything, we hope that the concept has been adopted by all the landowners through this space, so that they will become part of the forest, they will be the forest. The project is just there to try and regenerate the area and encourage the landowners to be forward-looking, to provide the kind of area that we all enjoy.
So will the trust keep going?
It will do, to support
yeah.
to support the management of the forest, yes.
Does it cost a lot of money to actually run the trust?
to run the,
Trust to do what you're doing.
well, the Forest Centre alone, we've just completed 1 year, and we think we're just, because we're all volunteers running this, remember, it's been a hard battle because Essex, who own the buildings, didn't hand us any of the information because it all had to go to auditors. And you know, auditors, sorry, they take a long time. And so we literally didn't get any of the historical information on budgeting until about 2 months ago. So we've been going through the year blind, and fortunately, at the end of the year, we are in hand. We have kept our heads above water, but of course we've now got to start generating money to carry out the work in the green space, because that's why the centre's there. The centre is there to inform people, but also to create money to carry out the work in the green spaces through the forest. So we will try, we'll still work with the local authorities. We've got commitment from 2 of them for money for the coming year. The other ones, we think Brentwood may be coming back on board, fingers crossed. Barking Dagman's a little bit harder. But, you know, if we can keep them funding us to some degree, then we have got some hope. We can always do with extra support, sorry.
Another question, would you like my foxes?
We've all got foxes, I'm afraid. They are part
I've
of
got a really family of them, you would like to take them around your life as well.
I think your garden's far too nice, I think.
Any other questions for Mary?
You said you're looking for trustees. What is involved in being a trustee of the...
Well, we meet, our basic meetings are 4 times a year. They're our formal meetings. Each trustee takes on a different role in the management of the whole project. My particular role is to run the Forest Centre and community links. So that's what I spend my time doing. Others take on other roles. Obviously we're looking for certain people to do certain things. We need someone that can help us with PR work, because that's an area, I think someone was talking about, it's important that you get the message out to people if you're a community organisation. It is important that you get the message out. We need help with financial. We do have one trustee, but he's quite often in Spain, which isn't helpful when you're trying to manage the
same problem.
It means that if at this stage there is quite a lot to do, but hopefully once we get the organisation properly organised and on a business level, we've got consultants working with us at the moment, paid for by Havering, I have to say, because they were forward-looking. They've paid for these consultants, and they're setting up a business plan for us. So that's being done, but we do need extra trustees, and we also need extra volunteers. So if anyone's got any spare time, we need them at the centre, we need them to do the work out in the forest as well.
I'd now like to call upon Ron Goggins to give a vote of thanks to him, please.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. In view of our long association with the project, Mary, it's very nice to see the actual results coming in front of us, something positive being done with our cooperation, and on which subject, of course, so many of our members, I'm sure, have close to their heart. It's our local area, so we'd like to see that sort of thing going on. And I must thank you very much on behalf of the club for putting it over so beautifully and showing us those nice pictures. Thank you again.